high prominent role that you have for Florida on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and some of those policies and sort of what you want to hope to accomplish in the coming year. And, you know, Juan will have some policy questions. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, first of all, I say that my high role is being a member of Congress and representing South Florida, and being chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. That's just a little cherry on top. But I always say there's not a bad seat in the House, and my main responsibility is to represent the constituents. And I'm a real down-home gal, come home every weekend, and I never get beltway fever. I never have what Ronald Reagan says, always remember, dance with the ones that brung you. And I know this is hometown, so
Sergio
it's nice to be
Bustos
chair.
is our,
Sure.
Our political editor. Yes, dance with the ones that brung you.
Darrell Royal said it
So. Who said that?
As a Texan, Darrell Royal, who was the coach of the University of Texas.
Oh, then the gift. Oh, he stole it from him. I'm gonna look that up. Thank you for telling me. Thanks. So give credit where credit is due.
One always holds up Texas.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about with this new district. What are you finding? Is there any difference from your old district now that you went through redistricting? What are there any differences in the issues that people are talking about? What you're hearing?
Well, I've been in this rodeo now for Texas reference for 30 years. So I've represented a chunk of Miami-Dade or South Florida in some fashion for many a year. And State House, State Senate, and now Congress. So this is kind of like going home again. But of course, things change from when I represented South Hialeah. I hated to lose Miami Beach because I worked that area very hard, paid a lot of attention to it. When we were able to do earmarks, made sure that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would dredge the sand there, dredge the beaches, so that we could fill it with sand, which is great protection now that we're in hurricane season, as a reminder. And if you go to Miami Beach, you will see some of our work there, because they're still pumping sand, and that's a good barrier to protect life and property. So I hate to lose the beach. And I figured that I would lose something because my district has grown. And as you know, they all have to be a certain number of people. And at that particular time, everybody's frozen, and everyone's district is exactly the same. It's incredible. But I did not think that I would lose both Miami Beach and the Keys. That was a big shock. Just last night, I was in Key West for the Reagan Day dinner. Herman Cain was the speaker. And
do you have pizza on the menu?
And then, well, everybody made every 999 joke possible. But once upon a time, you would never even have a Republican dinner in Key West. It would be unheard of. So Key West was changing a lot, and but populations changed. So no Keys, no Miami Beach, and now I'm probably the only member of Congress in Florida that has only one county. This is incredible. I only have Miami-Dade County from South Hialeah to the Monroe County line, right where Dade ends. And so for me, personally, I would say that having a compact district is certainly easier. It's still an interesting district. Many Republicans in Florida have what they call an R+13. That means you're a 13-point Republican advantage district. I have now an Obama district. So I go from an Obama district to a 2-point Republican district. So it's marginally better in terms of political parties, but I like to say that I always try to get Democrat votes and independent votes. So they gave me a challenging district because they figured, Illy can win it. Well, I'd like to get a break every once in a while, but it looks like not this time. So it's a challenging district still.
So this district is about half and half, Republican, Democrat?
So yes, it's got two percentage points better for Republicans than Democrats.
And then independents are about...
Independents are a growing force here, right. As you know. That is the party, non-party, that is growing. And so it's a district that I have to pay attention to, that I have to cultivate, reintroduce myself to voters I used to represent many years ago. but they have not had me as their congresswoman before. So it's a new area, and I work hard at it. I've already done whatever I can and will continue to do.
And yet, even though it's a new district, you haven't drawn like high-profile opponents.
Well, I hope that the reason that I haven't drawn higher-profile opponents is because people see me as someone who's dedicated to public service, someone who wants the best for her constituents, and I'm not there to make a buck or to do anything other than provide quality constituent service, which is our #1 priority. Yes, voting on important issues, of course, that's why I have the voting card. But I think taking care of people, so many people who've just been recently arrived to the United States, and we're the first door many times that they knock on. So that gives me a sense of pride, because I remember when we first came here and how bewildering it was for us. So I'm proud to be the district where lots of new folks are coming in every day, and lo podemos orientar.
Maybe we can start with
yes.
some foreign
yes.
affairs questions first. What would you do differently in terms of U.S. policy toward Israel than what the president is doing?
I think the president has mishandled our great friend and ally Israel, and I know that sounds like a cliche to say our great friend and ally, but I think it bears repeating. In a troubled region of the world, an ally needs to be told and comforted and say, we've got your back. Israel is surrounded by hostile neighbors who have sworn to eliminate her, and every day we get reminded of that. Even not a close neighbor, but Iran down the street a bit. Just a few days ago, Ahmadinejad said that Israel was a cancerous growth that has got to be eliminated, and he didn't say nice things about the U.S. either. What did Obama do in his years? Well, he left, just very visual manifestations of his almost disdain for Israel's leaders. I think that with best intentions, he wants a two-state solution. He believes, I think, that Israel has been too belligerent and too demanding, and so he wanted to put Israel in its place. By doing so, he walked out of a meeting, left Netanyahu there to confer with aides while he went to have dinner with his family. And it was such a telling moment, because it spoke volumes about the way that he was dismissive of Israel. I think that we need to I think that we need to make sure that Israel knows that we've got her back. Iran with nuclear capabilities is an existential threat to Israel, and I don't think that Israelis feel that President Obama has got their back, and I think the polls indicate, when you do polls about how Israelis feel about President Obama, it shows that they don't, he's not one of their favorite presidents. Other presidents have been far more supportive, that have been Democrats as well. So it's not a problem of a party, because Bill Clinton was a friend, and others have been friends. Jimmy Carter, a disaster when it comes to Israel, but so it's not a matter of party, but of policy. I don't think that, President Obama has not been very helpful when we tried to pass Iran legislation. He held it up for months and months. We could have passed those bills easier and in a faster way. He finally signed it, the bill, and he signed it in a way that these are post office signings, and then the Iran bill in the middle, and more post office signings. He's showing in every which way that Israel and the defense of Israel is not a high priority for him.
Now, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was here this morning and was asked the same question. Of course, you and Debbie have been together in Congress for a while now. And she was very passionate about Israel, about the president's defense of Israel, and in fact said that just the other day some key officials from Israel were interviewed on CNN and were talking about, how they felt that this administration was a friend of Israel and was very helpful. So, I mean, is it more? It seems to be more style than substance at this point.
Absolutely not. Very much substance. Mm-hmm. Style as well. I just used that style example because it was a manifestation of the problem of the policy. I think that sometimes folks vote more with their party, no matter how they feel about a certain issue. If they're Democrats, they're going to vote Democratic. If they're Republicans, they're going to vote Republican. But if you look at the issue of Israel and isolate that, you would see that the president has not been a forward thinking individual who has really come to Congress to advance the cause of giving Israel the tools that it needs to be defensive about, or even offensive about, this nuclear capability of Iran. Now, it's good that Debbie is passionate about this, because I think she's got to be on the defensive. She's got a lot of explaining to do, because the president has failed miserably when it comes to Israel's defense. I don't think that that he has done the work willingly. I don't think that he has come to Congress and helped us move legislation along, and he's been a reluctant warrior in terms of protecting Israel's security. So, because the election is so close at hand, I think that he's been better than he has of late. That's why elections are great, because they make everyone see the light, and they make us open up our eyes. And I think he has been confronted with the reality that many people who value Israel's security and who want to make sure that she is preserved as a democratic Jewish state, they do not regard him as a leader in that issue. And I just can't see how one can make the case that President Obama has been a forceful leader to safeguard Israel's security. He's been a forceful leader for many things, for the stimulus, for health care, but on the issue of what Israeli officials say, and let me tell you this, I know because of my role as chair, many times countries have to say to us, we really want this, we really want X, Y, and Z. Sometimes it's not really that the countries or the people, the leaders really want it, but they want something else from the administration, and that's what you have to do. So when an Israeli leader tells me, I want you to unfreeze aid to Palestinians, I say, thank you for your opinion, I value it, but I'm not a member of the Israeli Knesset. I'm a member of the United States Congress, and I want to do what's best for the U.S. in terms of Palestinian aid. But I value your opinion. Sometimes Israeli leaders, not to make an exception about Israeli leaders, sometimes foreign leaders come to us and they make requests, but they're really at the behest of the administration. And they make statements that are because they want something. And I'm not saying that that's double dealing. That's the way that sometimes things happen. Mm-hmm. And so you would have ambassadors tell you that President Obama has been a great leader. And if I were the ambassador to Israel in the United States, I would do everything in my power to have good relations with the president and have good relations with the Congress. I would not be saying anything bad about the president either. So that's why you have to take those opinions, not with a grain of salt, but you have to understand in the context in which they are given. So I value the opinion of Israeli leaders saying that President Obama has done a good job, but I understand the context in which those statements are made.
Chavez, we've seen, what more could the president or should the president do vis-a-vis our policy toward Venezuela?
Well, first of all, I know that sometimes people have a knee-jerk reaction saying we should put Venezuela on the state sponsor of terrorism. Mm-hmm. And I also was looking at that seriously, because when you look at the threat that Chavez poses to the Western Hemisphere and to America's interest in the Hemisphere, it is very worrisome. However, sanctions and embargoes and other punitive measures are not a one-size-fits-all. We have certain sanctions, for example, on North Korea. We have other sanctions on Cuba. We have other sanctions on African countries. We have certain sanctions on certain groups. It's not, people think of it as a one-size-fits-all, but it's not really true. In terms of Chavez, I think a better approach, rather than putting Venezuela on the state sponsor list of terrorism, is to look at targeted targeted penalties or sanctions that you could take to let other countries know that the United States is serious about trying to help the Western Hemisphere be a stable region of the world. Because right now, I think that what we're facing is, while we ignore Hugo Chavez and his ties to Iran, his ties to Hezbollah, while we ignore that Hezbollah and Iranian individuals were responsible for one of the worst terrorism attacks in the Western Hemisphere, the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, that killed over 80 and maimed so many, and that had Iran's fingerprint and Hezbollah's fingerprints. When we ignore those items, those tragedies, then we tell the other countries, hey, it's no problem to poke a finger in the United States. It's no problem to be belligerent, and it's no problem to build trade groups like ALBA that are anti-democratic, anti-U.S., and anti-stability. So what we need to do is, what kind of penalties and what kind of outreaches penalties against Chavez, what kind of outreach in a positive way can we make to other Latin American countries that are our allies? For example, one of the things that I think was damaging was when we stalled the free trade agreement with Colombia for a number of years. And that was telling all of the other countries, boy, the United States says that they're your friends, but what have these Yankee imperialists done for you lately? El imperio los ha ignorado. And that's the truth. And that's, I thought we agreed on vodka, come on. But, so I say it's carrots and sticks. I think that some penalties must be leveled at Chavez. I don't think that we've taken a close look at what we can do. But when he helps the FARC, when he helps terrorist groups like that, when he helps extremist organizations, when he gives safe sanctuary for people who are breaking the law and destabilizing the hemisphere, when he expels ambassadors, when he takes those kinds of actions, if we just shrug our shoulders and say we're better off ignoring him, I don't think that that's helped us in these 4 years. So we need to look at establishing a credible strategy, and that's why I have a bill about the Western Hemisphere where we set out to do that. Get a plan to see what kind of penalties and what kind of initiatives we can take to our neighbors and our allies to show them that we're not a crisis-oriented country, that we're going to reach out to Latin America and we're going to establish these bonds. Because right now it's like whack-a-mole. Whatever, it's Syria, it's Iraq, it's Afghanistan. We're crisis-motivated, and Latin America will one day be lost to us unless we wake up and see Iran's influence in the Western Hemisphere. And when you look at where Iran was 20 years ago in Latin America and where it is now, it's really eye-opening. They have embassies, they have consulates. This was not the case 20 years ago. So to say that nothing has changed in Latin America and that Iran's influence is waning, I think the evidence is clear that that is not the case.
Question, Congresswoman.
Yes.
You mentioned that you're going to miss representing Miami Beach and the Keys.
Absolutely.
You mentioned being in Monroe County last night.
Yes.
It was Lincoln Day.
Yes, they call it Reagan Day. I think it's because they do it so late in the year. They can't get away with a Lincoln Day in August.
I understand last night you in essence passed the baton to David Rivera.
To David Rivera, right.
Now, it's no secret that...
it's up to the voters, but yes.
David's had a very contentious first term as a congressman. And we've been documenting stories, including today's, regarding the campaign finance work done with this Democratic primary candidate. My question to you is, will you be campaigning with David, and has he sought your advice on his work as a freshman lawmaker? I
know as a member of our Foreign Affairs Committee, David has been diligent, he's been thorough, intelligent, has crafted hard-hitting questions for our witnesses. He shows up on time. He stays the duration of the meetings. He's a great member of the committee because he's very involved in every issue. And that is not just for the full committee, it's that way for the subcommittee as well. That's his work as a member of Congress, and I see him as a diligent, thoughtful, and conscientious person. His work as a candidate is something that I'm not familiar with. I've not had a conversation with David ever about his difficulties, what his campaign strategy will be, how he's faring, what's the next step for him. I'm not involved in his campaign. I don't know any of the figures who are mentioned in those stories. Maybe I've met them. I meet so many people, but they're not integral people to me and my campaign.
And I campaign with him as he moves forward?
Well, I run my own race, and I endorse every Republican candidate. Encourage others to step aside, like Todd Aiken, but that's another story. but I endorse every Republican candidate, but I don't get involved in anyone's race.
But again, just to be clear, you're
Yes.
not going to campaign with him between now and November. The baton was it last night. You passed it.
I passed the baton. I wish him best. I think he's got a lot of positive attributes. I hope that he clears up the many questions that people have about his finances. I have faith that he will. And as far as his work in Congress, that's the part I can attest to, that I found it to be thorough, and I don't think anyone would say otherwise. His campaign or his personal life, I am not privy to, and we've never discussed it, and I don't know anything about it.
Good enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm a constituent. What have you done for me lately?
Condolences. Well, I tell you what,
Well, near
if you
Epiphany.
have, near Epiphany, well,
Right.
I go right down that red road all the time. Well, if you're a small business owner, what I've done for you lately is I hope I've gotten out of your way. I think that small businesses are the economic engine of our country. I think that we've been passing too many regulations and stifling economic growth. I don't think that a government stimulus program is going to help our economy. I don't think that's going to employ people. I think it's great for all of our cities. I understand that our cities are cash strapped, but what we need to do is lower taxes, help the economy by making sure that you as a small business owner are able to create jobs by hiring people. And if we keep passing regulations like Obamacare that worry a lot of business owners, because then you won't be able to create jobs. In fact, you'll be thinking about who to let go because you can't afford all of the regulations that we pass on you. As a homeowner, we don't have much to say in terms of home values and property taxes, and that's what bothers people the most. And I don't think that I need to educate people. It's not my job to say, oh, that's somebody else's job, because we're all in this together. But the reason that Congress has a 11% approval rate is because we're doing a terrible job of communicating with you, my constituent, and we're doing a terrible job of doing the nation's work. In fact, I think, who are those 11 people? It's got to be friends and family, because people are disgusted with us, and I hear it all the time. When you go to the gas station, when you go to the pharmacy, when I go to the hospital this whole week, I hear from everybody, and because I like to stay in touch, and I would say, people are really mad at Congress, and rightfully so. I will say in our defense, and I hate to sound defensive, but I need to do that. We have passed in the House over 30 pro-growth, pro-economic stability bills. Harry Reid has said not just no, but heck no. He is not going to take up any of our bills because he thinks that it's positive politics to say that we're a do-nothing Congress. We have passed a lot of bills, and I'll be glad to show you that list, and yet they have not become law. Perhaps one or two, literally one or two, have become law, but it does not mean that we have not done our part. I know that's defensive, and I know that it sounds like I'm trying to prove that Obama is pro-Israel. That's pretty tough, and I'm trying to prove that Congress has done its job. That's really tough too. But Congress has done, the House has done its job. But what we have done is not get it through the finish line.
Right.
And does that mean that we need to control the Senate? I think it does, because, or at least get another majority leader that will be open to at least discussing the bills. Let them come up for a vote. But all of our bills, with the exception of one or two, have not come up for a vote, even a vote.
And I know that that's the strategy in both houses. They have their own strategies as to how to negotiate with the other party or not negotiate. But I do wonder at some point, and I come in as an independent voter who's not affiliated with either party, who's voted for Republicans in the past and has voted for Democrats. And so the frustration that I sense, and a lot of the folks that I know, is we have this mounting deficit, you know, that's it's imploding. At the same time, we had a proposal from Bull Simpson. Where would we go from this? We have the healthcare proposal that was meant to really bring down the cost of healthcare, because as we've seen, even without tinkering with healthcare, the costs were escalating so much higher than our inflation and our cost of living. So, you know, the Republican plan has been to essentially say, let business handle it, get government out of the way, and it will right itself. Is that really realistic?
More than that. I think more than that. We have proposed plans, again, that have not gone anywhere, but many of us are in favor of many of the aspects of Obamacare without the part of the overbearing regulation and putting the marketplace more at play. And we believe that the marketplace...
Those are the cost controls, though, right?
But the problem has
bring in my 26-year-old, I have a 22 and a 20,
and we can
just
find
turned
ways,
26
and we
yesterday. He's about to lose his health care. I'm about now to go into the marketplace, that open and free marketplace, and it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more money than what it was costing us under this plan.
I understand. Now, I did not put my kids in our plan. We have them, so I did not take advantage of any of the Obamacare provisions, but we went into the marketplace as well, and
cheap.
It's not cheap. I understand that, but there are some
Very
parts.
high deductibles.
There are some parts of health reform. I don't even want to call it Obamacare. There are some parts of health reform that we must, as a party, embrace, because it is a crushing issue for all Americans, and there are very few people.
Asthma,
absolutely.
You know, we
and
now have children who are covered that before were not because of pre-existing conditions.
And,
so you're saying let's keep all of that.
If we can work together. But the problem is, what did President Obama and the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats do? They rammed this bill through, and they never sat down to converse. I know that bipartisanship is a four-letter word. It's not to me, because I like to work with the other side of the aisle. That's how we were able to pass the Iran bill, the North Korea human rights bill. Every one of the bills that I have proposed and authored and passed, and there are many of them, dozens of them, have been in a bipartisan way. So I know how to talk to people and try to get a finished product. But when there's no will, when there's just a drive to score political points, it's the well is poisoned, and I think that has been the problem, that we haven't sat down in a table like this and say, you know, one of the goals that we want is to have young adults under the age of 26 stay in their parents' policy. How can we achieve that while not having to compromise my principles nor yours? How can we make that happen? Another aspect of reforms that I favor, and I hope that my party favors, is portability, taking it with you. Also, to have the ability to buy across state lines. Maybe there's a better policy in New York, but if I can't buy it in Florida, then I'm out of that market. And there's so many issues in which we can agree. Let's pick those 5 pre-existing conditions. That's an issue that I think everyone would agree, that if you are diabetic, that you should not have to be frozen in this policy because you are then unable to shop elsewhere because of your health condition. So there are about six of these kinds of reforms that I think once the atmosphere calms down and people are able to see clearly, and we're not out to score political points, that we can come together. Because I think all of us have been touched by members of our family who've been sick, children who have autism, young adults who are intellectually challenged. And where do you go with that? It seems that there's a safety net for the very poor and for the certain kids, but for a lot of the communities they don't see any way out, and the middle class is feeling squeezed and squeezed even more. I think it's doable. I think it's a worthy goal, and I think that if we work together, we can do it. I'm in the hope business, so I think that's
Hope and
possible.
change business.
Well,
Well,
not that
quickly.
hopey changey.
But if Romney wins the presidency,
That would be changed.
will you actually vote to repeal Obamacare?
Oh, I have voted to repeal Obamacare in one way or another 33 times. So
But
first
you're saying you like certain provisions.
That's
so
right.
Would you maybe recast it and say,
That's right. I think that there's a lot in health reform that we can agree and we can find a way to make it economically feasible. I don't think that it's unheard of. I think that in many businesses they're able to do it, and there's no reason why we can't come together and make that happen.
you
And
would vote to repeal Obamacare first and then bring
Right,
this
I have
provision?
voted to repeal it many times and parts of it many times. So I think that's why they come with a total of 33. Not that we've repealed it totally 33 times, but there are a lot of taxes in the bill. There are a lot of boards. There's a lot of unelected bureaucrats in charge of it. But there are some aspects of it that are favorable. We need to build consensus on that. And I don't know that in the first year of the Romney presidency that would be possible, and a lot depends on what happens in the Senate. I think it's just been a bitter fight, and it was not a bipartisan product. Repealing it was bipartisan, had more bipartisan vote than passing it.
I
That's
think
the mood of the electorate. They like aspects of it, but on the whole, they're very
there's fear
wary.
of it,
There's
how it's
very
gonna be.
because it's they know if we're in charge, we'll find a way to mess it up. So we have to deal with people's fears and find common ground. And I like finding common ground. I think that's where the success is.
Any common ground with this administration on Cuba?
I think that the administration has found that the Castro regime is a force to be reckoned with, and when President Obama said, "As you unclench your fist, and we will throw out our hand," and what they've seen is that the Castro regime bit off the fingers of that hand, and now we have Alan Gross, an innocent American who's been held hostage there in kangaroo court and needs help in getting out. And he's being used as a pawn by the Castro regime until the election takes place. And we thought maybe the Pope would bring about that freedom, but obviously they don't care. The Castro regime doesn't care about Alan Gross or anyone else on the island. And so they're holding out hope that this exchange for the Cuban Five, which is a real misunderstanding of how our American government works, that they think that can happen. Maybe they think it can happen in an Obama second term. So I think that they're waiting to see the results of the election, and I think that right now our policy is frozen right now in Congress. President Obama is not going to try anything until after the election, but I fear that a second presidency of President Obama will not bring hope to the Cuban people. It will bring further concessions to the Castro regime. And that's one of the many reasons that I do not want to see a second term for President Obama, and I much prefer the Mitt Romney approach on this and many other issues.
So if Mitt Romney were to be elected, and what would Cuba policy be? What would you tell him that Cuba, advise him? He'd want to have your ear, obviously, on Cuba.
Well, I don't know that he would, that I'm the person who he would listen to. I don't think that I'm in that category, but if asked, I would certainly give him that advice, and he has asked, and I have
Would
given
we
advice
get rid
before.
of the travel that we've opened up under this administration?
I think that he would look at that travel and
Can you put that
conclude
genie back in that
and
bottle?
conclude that that what has that travel done in terms of bringing opportunity to the Cuban people. That certainly that was the goal, and just like the cultural exchanges, that has been the goal, but that has not done what we wanted it to do. And remember that every country in the world, except for the United States, has these relations with the Castro regime. That has not brought the Cuban people any closer to democracy. And I think it's a misnomer to say that that we do have this total embargo on the island, because if you are not able to travel to Cuba legally with a complete license, then you're just not a very creative consumer of of electronic media. Because if you go to church, then you can go as a church worker. If you write a blog, you can go as a journalist. If you care about human rights, you go as a human rights activist. There's so many categories of travel that you can go legally. So to say that
From this
we're
end,
shut up,
it still
yes,
depends whether they'll
but
accept you on that end.
that's the what I always say to people is, that, and when we've seen this Arab Spring that has happened, all around the world, except for Cuba, and my colleagues always ask me, maybe they really like Castro because we don't see those uprisings. And I said, well, because the model for Cuba is really North Korea. You don't see any uprisings there. You saw it in Egypt, you saw it in Libya, you see it in Syria, because even in those oppressive regimes, and I'm not making any excuses for them, but there is the internet, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's opportunity. Here, regardless of U.S. policy, what prevents the Castro regime from allowing people to have Twitter and Facebook and internet access? It's not U.S. policy. It's the failed regime of the Castro brothers. That's what has to be changed, not U.S. policy.
Do you think Radio and TV Marti is meeting its goal right now? How has it been in the last 3 years under the administration?
I think that the director has taken a direction that I believe is not the best, because he's been looking at exploring more options about the internet. And he will tell you how many hits they have on certain pages and which segments. And I say to him, but how many people have access to the internet? So he's playing to a worldwide audience rather than what is working in Cuba. So I always encourage the director, whoever it is, whoever appoints them, Republican or Democrats, let's look at what can really happen in Cuba using that program, not expanding the internet when people don't have the internet and they have to smuggle their Twitters, their tweets here and there. I mean, that's so the expansion of radio and TV Marti is more internet.
Yeah.
It is very internet heavy, and that's why with all of these upheavals and the arrests, they haven't really been, the leaders have not been in Radio and TV Marti. Radio and TV Marti has not been breaking any new ground. I would say the Herald and El Nuevo and folks on Spanish and Cuban radio are really in touch with the people on the street. And I would say that Radio and TV Marti is a little too maybe a little above the fray.
Well, I was wondering because, it seemed to me, I caught it the other day, and I thought, they're getting a lot more feeds from the island. They've been able to get some cameras.
Seen that, yes.
And so I think that, that was a positive. They're finding out about things that are occurring before.
They're not as reactive. So
right.
I would like.
It's springing up from the island. The coverage is coming from there, which before it seemed to be a little more exile heavy. That said, I did wonder if it was if it was pursuing a policy that would reach more Cubans, and I think they're continuing on the TV part, and they say radio is still very important.
Right. I would like Radio and TV Marti to be more proactive. I'd like them to do a little bit more. I'd like them to step up their game. And I don't.
They had their news director do an editorial, which was
I saw that. Yes. So it's
on the
getting,
Cardinal,
so if it
and that's
moves,
what, that
if it
created
moves
a
in that
buzz.
direction, then that's a good thing.
I thought it
just-
created a buzz with the dissident movement, did it not? I
Yes.
mean, they reacted to it, and, I mean, the church had to sort of step out of its comfort zone. and-
True, true,
yeah.
true, true. I just thought, it has resources, and I don't know that they're using them up to the level that they could.
Any other questions?
I would like to just make sure, if I could,
Yes.
just expand on David Rivera, just because I don't want to leave the impression at all that I am standoffish about David, and I want to see David reelected. I would say that I'm going to be as involved in David's race as I would for Mario's race, meaning I don't get involved in other people's races. I run my own race. I don't wish to make the distinction about David. Whatever help I give to Mario, I will give to David and every other Republican candidate. I am not standoffish about standing next to David. I don't know about his financial challenges. I don't pretend to know. He's not said anything to me. I don't know anything about them. But I support him in his reelection, and I have found him to be a diligent member of Congress. I just didn't want to give you the impression that I'm saying I passed off the baton to David and that's all I'm going to do. I would say that for Mario, I pass off the baton to Mario and that's all I'm going to do. I don't wish to make the distinction that I'm going to help all of these people, but I'm not going to help David Rivera. I'm going to help all of the people that I can in the same way. I make no distinction and I make no separation between David and other members whom I'm helping.
Well, thanks so
Just wanted
much.
to clear that up.
All right.
Thank you very much.